I'm author and critic David Agranoff. I'm a horror and science fiction author, critic, and researcher. In this podcast, I wanted to provide in-depth interviews and panel discussions with everyone from New York Times bestselling authors to researchers, musicians, and anyone I find interesting. Welcome to Postcards from a Dying World.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of Postcards from a Dying World, the first in a new miniseries. I know I keep creating these miniseries inside of Postcards. So we got our Star Trek roundtables, which Issa's a part of, and we have our Science Fiction Hall of Fame. Now I'm going to be doing these unproduced scripts podcasts. I intend to have Anthony and Issa on most of these episodes, if not all of them, as long as they're available to do them, because one of the things is we're all obsessed with screenwriting. We like screenwriting, and we would like to actually get paid to do it. So we might as well talk about it. And I thought, I always like when I come up with an idea for something, like I need to read more screenplays. I want to make it useful. I want to cut two carrots with one knife. So now we're doing this show. We're going to start with an infamous script, an infamous production, which would be the third Alien film, the sequel to James Cameron's Aliens. And one thing everyone should know is that there were 10 drafts of this script, and there was 8 writers, at least, on this script. And if you watch, by the way, the final product of Alien 3, you will see all the monks are named after the writers who did various drafts of the script. So it's kind of a funny Easter egg. So to introduce my co-hosts for this series, Issa and Anthony. Issa, let's start with you. What's your experience with, give everybody a little introduction on your kind of philosophy of film and your experience screenwriting.
Okay, I have well, I've been a fan of movies my whole life, and I've always been interested in writing and directing movies. Unfortunately, I developed that a little late in life, and I'm just trying to get into it more now. Of course, life interferes, so you have to find the time. But Alien is one of my favorite movies. Aliens is one of my all-time favorite movies. And Alien 3 was probably the hardest movie to make ever, and I'm really excited to talk about it. So that's where I come at this from.
You did actually produce a movie, though.
I did, yeah. I've written and directed a feature film, and I learned a lot doing it, and I look forward to doing more.
Yeah. Anthony, tell the folks who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Anthony Trevino. I guess to answer your question first about my film philosophy, David, film is kind of my first love. I love writing, but film has always been kind of like my number one thing. That it's what I used to do in high school. It's what I initially went to college for. I've made some short films. I've written some features. I've written a series with David. I wrote a feature with David. I wrote a Christmas cheerleader movie with Ryan C. Thomas, which I will not get into some other things. Yeah, David's giving me that look. We can talk about that offline. And then
some nefarious stuff happened with that script out of your control.
I love.
I will say that you don't have to say it.
I love the Alien franchise as much as I can without kind of like grumbling to myself, but we can get into that. And I'm also a comic writer and just kind of a writer in general. And if you follow me on Letterboxd, you'll realize how lazy my film criticism has gotten. But hey, Letterboxd isn't for me to be serious on.
Yeah. The other thing too about these two co-hosts is that these are the movie nerds that I'm having to discuss the best movies of the year every year. So he's been doing that with me for a couple years, and then Anthony yelled at me for not having him a part of it, and he was right. He should be a part of it. Anthony and I also co-hosted the Dickheads for a long time, and the TV series we co-wrote together, we turned into a novel, Nightmare City. You can get Nightmare City and see what all the fuss is about. We're pretty proud of that book. So, but it would be a better TV series. So if people would start buying the book, maybe it would happen. So, on that note, I am also a big fan of the franchise, and one of the things we're gonna do a lot in this series is talk about the Alien franchise in the context of the time in which this draft was written. So we need to set the stage a little bit, because when we talk about what we would do with this script and these kinds of things, we're going to have to time travel a little bit and forget the rest of the franchise. So Alien Resurrection hasn't happened, The Covenant, Prometheus, all that has happened is Alien and Aliens.
And what's crazy is that is surprisingly easy to do, because the rest of the franchise never really delivered on the initial promise.
Yeah. There are ups and downs with the rest of the franchise, but we're going to talk about it as if we're stuck in 1989 with David Twohy getting this job. I'm going to give a little background on Twohy when we get to him, because he was not the first or the second writer on this project. He was the third. But let's talk about where the franchise was. We had Alien, which was a cult classic. It was a hit, but it wasn't a blockbuster. It was a fan favorite. And when Aliens got made with Jim Cameron, there was even a lot of talk about, does this movie deserve a sequel? Right? And I can tell you, in 1986, when Aliens came out, it was a phenomenon. It was a huge blockbuster. It was like one of the top rated or the top grossing R-rated movies of all time at the time. And very uncharacteristically, Sigourney Weaver got an Academy Award nomination for a role in a monster movie, which is a big fucking deal. Now, one of the things that makes Aliens different from Alien is that it's an action movie. And I went to see it in the theater with my father, who does not like science fiction or horror movies. And I have a distinct memory of him turning to me halfway through the movie, and he said, "It's just Zulu Dawn with aliens." And I was like, okay. But that experience of seeing Aliens in the theater with my father is one of my all-time favorite movie-going experiences, because, and Quentin Tarantino has talked about this, the reaction when you saw Aliens, like, opening weekend was bananas. The crowds were going crazy. Jim Cameron knows how to make a sequel, first off. And keep in mind, Jim Cameron, we think of him as Avatar, all those things now, but at the time,
I think of him as James Cameron. I didn't realize you guys were so close that you'd just call him Jim.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I may be projecting.
I don't know. I always think of him as the Abyss and Aliens and one of the greatest action films of all time, Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Like I ignore
Terminator 2, no. First Terminator.
Well, okay. Well, we can argue about that offline, but I don't like later Jim Cameron. So
yeah. Well, Issa and I do, and
he's my favorite director. I'm a huge fan of almost everything he's ever done, and I'm excited. I was so excited at the time for the movie.
Yeah, and the thing about Aliens was that we knew it was a space movie. We knew that it was a sequel to this kind of morose haunted house movie, right? And then this huge action movie came, and the audiences at the time, like, were screaming in the theater. People were like freaking out, laughing constantly at Bill Paxton and all kinds of things. The movie just worked the crowd fantastically.
Yeah.
It was a huge hit. So coming off of it, of course, they're going to want to do an Alien 3. So what are you gonna do for Alien 3, right? Where are you gonna go? Um, so the thing was is that the one of the powerful people in the franchise, one of the producers that had a huge role in the first movie was Walter Hill, who's a famous director who directed the Warriors, right? And but Walter Hill was a more hands-on producer for Alien, and I think the rumors or what you read online kind of vary, but the thought is that he kind of poo-pooed a lot of the direction of Aliens and was not as heavily involved in the sequel. And so when it was this huge success, Walter Hill kind of wanted to take back some of the control of Alien 3, and at one point wanted to direct Alien 3. Okay, really pushed to direct Alien 3. But one of his directives was to try and bring back the horror film of it all. And he really wanted to, which personally, coming off the high of Aliens, in my opinion, is one of the bad moves. Okay, because everyone had so much excitement and so much love for Aliens. And I can remember being in the theater for Alien 3 in 1992 when it came out and was waiting for another thrill ride.
Well,
right.
so there's one thing that I was trying to remember, and I can't remember if I've just invented this or if this was just like a fan trailer that made its way into my memory. But at some point, like well before the movie got released, when Alien 3 got announced, the teaser trailer, at least as I remember it, was on Earth, everyone can hear you scream. And the idea was going to be that the aliens were on Earth and it was like this crazy thing. And that sounded awesome. And that's what I was expecting. But I don't remember if that was like a real thing that they actually released as a teaser trailer, or if it was just like something I made up. I can't actually remember. Does that ring a bell to anyone?
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was the thing that kind of was floating around there.
Because that's a great tagline.
Yeah.
Like, that was amazing.
So the first writer hired by Walter Hill to write a script for Alien 3 is award-winning science fiction writer William Gibson, who had 3 novels at the time, and his cyberpunk classic Neuromancer came out in 1984. And so he was hired in 1987 to write the first draft for Alien 3. I'm not going to go a ton into that one. And one of the reasons why we didn't do that on here is because everybody knows about Alien 3 by Gibson, in the sense that it's been turned into a graphic novel, it's been novelized, and that script has been floating around and a lot of people have read it.
Have you guys read either the comic or the novelization?
I have read the script. I read the script before it was a comic book, and then I read the comic book. Yes.
Yeah, I haven't read any of the adaptations of it. How is it?
Well, here's the thing. And not to David Twohy said, I listened to an interview that David Twohy did about writing the script that we're going to be talking about. And one of the things he said was, I think that script that Gibson wrote was too cyberpunky. It's not cyberpunky at all. I think he was just saying that because he probably hadn't read it. The thing about it is that it has it's a very slow and political script. And it's very much about the corporation. And Bishop is the only returning character in the first version. Hicks is in it, and Bishop. And you think the awkward death of Ripley and Newt and Hicks in the produced movie is bad. It's just Hicks survives, but Newt and Ripley were like killed by the alien, but somehow Hicks wasn't in Gibson's script just because. And it's the first lazy thing about that script. And look, that the thing was Sigourney Weaver said she was not interested originally, that she didn't want to do it. And one of the things I like about Twohy's script is that he's just like, well, we just don't know what happened to Ripley and Newt and all that. And that was a much better choice. But so this first version of Gibson's script did involve Hicks and Bishop, and there was genetically altered xenomorphs in a lab, and it was on a space station called Anchor Point. And the second draft in 88, there was even less aliens. Like, they scaled back the aliens and did more of the political stuff. And I think the comic book is based on that second script, not the one with Hicks and Bishop. But there's a lot. I read it when it came out, the comic, and I read the script like when I lived in Portland, so over a decade ago. And so my memory on it is, But in 88, the same year that Gibson wrote his second draft, the studio hired Eric Red to do the next draft of the script. Now, Eric Red is a horror writer and novelist. He and director. His only real famous script at the time they hired him to do this is the amazing Hitcher with Rutger Hauer.
Damn right. Damn right. What a movie, guys. What a movie.
Yeah.
All-time favorite.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And then he recently directed a movie a couple years ago called 100 Feet. That's a haunted house film with a woman who's on house arrest. That's actually pretty good.
What's it called?
100 Feet. It has the lady from
Quentin Tarantino's next favorite movie.
No, it's Distance, not 100. Yeah. But sorry. No, it's the Femke, whatever her name. She was in the X-Men movie.
Famke Janssen.
Yes, she's in it, and she's a mother that's on house arrest for some reason, and she can only go 100 feet from the house, and then finds out the house is haunted. And it's a pretty good haunted house movie. So that's the most recent thing I know of Eric Red doing. I've met Eric Red a couple times at StokerCon, and I went to one of his book signings at Mysterious Galaxy. He's a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, I believe he signed my copy of Skip's Werewolves anthology. I think he has a story in there. He seemed like a cool dude.
Yeah, and his script, I have not read it, but I read about it, and it's about a character named Sam Smith. Really thought hard on that name. Who's on a space station battling xenomorphs. The most interesting thing that's different about it is that there's kind of a Logan's Run style glass dome small town built into the space station that's called North Star. And Eric Red has said when asked about the script, he has called it terrible. He is not a fan of the work he did. But he was the second writer. And the third writer, and this is where we're getting into the topic today, is David Twohy, who, and let's talk about where David Twohy was at in his career. Because again, he's done a lot of really cool stuff after this. But at the time, his two produced credits were Critters 2 and Warlock. But the movie that got him the job to do Alien 3 was his script for a little movie called The Fugitive, which had not been produced yet. So it was an unmade script, but his script for The Fugitive had been floating around Hollywood for a while, and everyone thought it was great. And it was enough of a calling card to get him the job to do Alien 3, not Warlock or Critters 2. But his script for and he told a really cool story on an interview about how he got the job to do The Fugitive on the set of Warlock, that they were in this like period town in a snowstorm filming a scene for Warlock, and one of the producers said, "Hey, I got the rights to all these old TV shows. Do you want to write any of them?" And he was like, "What are the TV shows?" And he listed a couple TV shows, and one of them was The Fugitive. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember The Fugitive. It's like Les Miserables. I'll do that one." And and then, of course, the script ended up getting made with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones, but that was a couple years after the Alien 3 gig. So, and he was hired to do so. Before we get into David Twohy, maybe we should talk about David Twohy for a minute and where he goes from here, because I think it's relevant to talking about his ability as a writer. He grew up in Long Beach. He is one of the famous video archives customers for Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery's video store that went on to become writers, including Josh Olson, who wrote A History of Violence, and was a regular at video archives as far as I can tell. He went to Long Beach College for film. Like I said, his first job was writing Mick Garris's Critters 2, but he did go on to write and direct several really great movies, at least in my opinion. How do you guys feel about David Twohy and where he's gone from here? Because I consider him to have 3 complete bangers in his career, and those to me are A Perfect Getaway, Pitch Black, and Below. And then I used to love The Arrival. I rewatched it this week, and it didn't hold up for me. Anthony, would you like to go first? Or no?
Well, I thought.
Hold on, I gotta look at his filmography. So
Okay.
let
Okay, I thought Pitch Black was fantastic. Like it really transcended what I expected going into like a Vin Diesel movie like that. You know what I mean? That was actually an excellent movie. I was surprised by how good it was.
And I rewatched it yesterday, and I think it holds up. And in
Okay,
fact,
I haven't seen it since it was out, but it was good.
yeah, and in fact, I think the solar eclipse scene is completely underrated for how amazing it is. And I think it should be up there, especially for what he did with the budget that he had on that one. And definitely, I'm not as big of a fan of the other Riddick movies, although I don't hate them as much as some people do.
He wrote G.I. Jane. I didn't know that. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And Waterworld. I just looked it up.
Really?
Yeah.
Waterworld was fantastic.
Well, and he will tell you that the first hour of Waterworld resembles his script, and he's very happy with it.
Right.
And then he feels like it becomes a different movie. But also, one of the interviews I listened to him, he told a really hilarious story about Kevin Costner being tied to like a mast on a boat, and how like he got stuck up there, and how the the set was never the same again after that day, which is very funny. But yeah, for me, I think his masterpiece is A Perfect Getaway. And that might be a hot take. But I think Perfect Getaway, which you cannot talk about without spoiling. But I think Perfect Getaway is one of the best examples of great structured writing. And I love the performances. And both Perfect Getaway and Pitch Black are experiences where, well, I didn't know anything going into the theater. Like when I saw Perfect Getaway in the theater, I just knew David Twohy wrote and directed it. So I went to see it because of that. And I didn't know what the plot was at all. And going into it cold really like made the movie better. And Pitch Black, when I went to see Pitch Black in the theater, I knew absolutely nothing about it other than it was science fiction. I didn't know the plot at all. I didn't know that it had basically one of the greatest elevator pitches of all time, which is Asimov's Nightfall meets Aliens, is one of the greatest pitches. And in fact, the original draft of the screenplay before Twohy came on was called Nightfall. And he even said, like, the first thing he said was, well, we can't call it that. And then Below, I think, is very underrated. This is the haunted submarine movie that got dumped in theaters. And what happened with that is that he had originally co-written that script with Darren Aronofsky, and it was supposed to be Darren Aronofsky's second movie, and then he chose to do Requiem for a Dream instead, and then Twohy ended up directing it. And that's a very underrated movie. And what happened was the Weinsteins wanted it to be PG-13, and Twohy refused to edit it down to PG-13, and so they only released, as revenge, they only released it in like 50 theaters.
Yeah, I never saw that one. It seems like the kind of movie I would have seen if I'd been able to. So
yeah, and I think Below is great. It holds up really well. I watched it this week. It's a masterpiece of tension and suspense, and using like the elements for tension and suspense. It maybe could have lost 20 minutes here and there. But the first time I saw it, I didn't feel that way. When I was rewatching it, I felt a little like, let's go, a little bit. But and then that said, this week I rewatched Arrival, and I loved that movie in '96 when it came out. I don't think it held up very well, and Charlie Sheen was very not believable as a radio astronomer in this review. And like the human characters didn't act like humans to me. So that's what I got to say about that. Anthony, your feelings on David Twohy's filmography?
No love for Terminal Velocity, guys? Come on.
I did not rewatch it. I remember liking it at the time.
But I think I mean, I love The Fugitive. Pitch Black was a movie I saw in high school, so like it's kind of just been a part of my like lore of me growing up. Like that came because I think it came out in what 2000 2000. So I was a freshman in high school when that movie came out. So I remember seeing it in theaters, and I like it. I don't know if the creature effects hold up as much for me anymore as like when it first came out, but I think it's a good movie. Of his, you know, filmography here, I would say probably The Fugitive is my favorite, followed by Warlock.
it's tough to beat Fugitive. That's a great movie. I mean, you know,
It's a fantastic movie. Yeah. But I think he's had a really interesting career path. And I like Waterworld. I'm just gonna say that now. I
like Waterworld too. I mean, there were parts of it that were like over the top stupid, but the good stuff about it was quite good.
Yeah,
it was the first time I ever realized that I try to drink their pee when they're dehydrated, because it opens with him peeing into that canteen and then putting it through like a filter.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so
and
I saw that in theaters.
One thing, the interview that I listened to with Twohy, he actually he got pretty excited talking about the things that he was really proud of from the script of Waterworld. And like there are elements that he was very amused with still. And this interview was from like 2 or 3 years ago. So like it was pretty interesting to hear him talk about it. But one of the things about The Fugitive and that script is that no other, I don't think any other writers were credited, and his script survived pretty well into, and he was I think he was on set a bunch for that. It was part of his, he considers his training for becoming a director. One thing too, I did not realize this until last night, but his first directed movie was a made for Showtime TV movie with Jeff Daniels called Grand Tour or Timescape. And it is
Grand Tour Disaster in Time. Is that it?
Yes, but it's based on a classic Henry Kuttner and C.L. Moore novella called Vintage Season, which I just happened to have read like a month and a half ago. And it's a fantastic novella. It doesn't sound like a very close adaptation, but it's interesting. But now I really need to watch it, and I didn't get to it in time. But yeah. So let's get into this script now. So we've set up, Twohy was, fresh off, writing The Fugitive was his most recent writing project. It was doing really well in Hollywood already. It was floating around. Lots of people wanted to do it. There were bidding wars from studios. There was directors like trying to attach themselves to it. Big stars were already being talked of. And so that's the scenario Twohy was going through when he was brought in by Walter Hill to write this draft. One thing that happened after this draft, you should know, is that Twohy was given the assignment when they were like, hey, the studio bosses changed, and this new studio boss came in and said, yeah, the script's great, but we're not doing this without Sigourney Weaver. So you got to put Sigourney Weaver in the script. So his plan was to swap out Styles from the script for Ripley. And Twohy was actually flown to New York with this script, to present it to Sigourney Weaver. And I'm sure, I don't know if he had to sit in the room while she read it or if like she read it before he got there, but he had a meeting and he eventually went back and started writing the second draft with Ripley in it when Vincent Ward was hired to be the director, and he started writing his script, which had the space monks on the prison. And Twohy was like, whoa, wait a second. I'm writing the script for Alien 3. What's this guy doing? Why is he writing a script? And they said, no. He's writing Alien 4. You keep writing. And so at one point they were both working on competing scripts for Alien 3. And that's when Twohy was like, you know what? Fuck this. You'll either use my script or not. And he walked because he knew that the director was doing his own script. Of course, the element of the space prison stayed. And so, but that's really it. So,
Did he get paid is the important question.
Yes, he got paid for the first draft of the script. I'm not sure if he got paid for the second draft of the script.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, but are you going to ask me the story breakdown?
Yes.
Wait, before we do that, David, I've spent decades thinking about this, and to me, it becomes like the most interesting part to me before we break into the actual script is imagine the decision-making process of like you're in a meeting, high-level meeting, like what are we going to do for Alien 3, right? There are all these like parameters that are just in place by what's already happened and what you want to do. And I think as we said earlier, the first movie is a straight up like monster in the house horror movie. The second movie is like an action movie, but it still has elements of that like monster in the house kind of thing. So how do you get even bigger for the third movie? And there are some inherent problems because the xenomorphs don't work on a larger scale. First of all, you have to have it be small and intimate if you want to do any of like what I think of as like the Thing type stuff, where it's like, someone's been implanted with an alien embryo and what's going to happen. That takes time and intimacy. And if you want to have a big battle, the only way you can have the aliens battles are about as big as it can be. Because if you're just on like a battlefield and it's like a bunch of people with guns against aliens, they just die really fast, right? So you need that, like, we're in this weird underground colony that's really small. So how do you get bigger, right? That's got to be the question everyone had to ask.
Well, after we get done with what Twohy did, I want us to return to your question of what would we do if we were going back in time and we were pitching Alien 3 at that moment. And then we can talk about all of our different ideas, because I thought about this a lot too. And and personally, I mean, if they called tomorrow and said, Anthony and David, write the next Alien movie in this timeline, I've got ideas for what I would want to do. But they also
I already texted you my idea after I saw Romulus. So you know where my head's at.
Yeah. Well, and I've got ideas, but I'm going to hold on to them because, for one thing, like I have friends that have written alien novels, and if we get the chance to do that, like, I'm going to hold that idea. But my idea,
I will happily.
Yeah,
happily write any novelizations.
exactly. Well, but for this, but to do a story that's set in that timeline, I mean, it's already done. So like, I might as well throw my idea out there. This the kind of the thinking. So we'll get there. But Anthony, start us off with the script breakdown.
Okay, great. Can I pee first and grab water because I'm gonna need it?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
great.
Hey, Alien 3.
Hey, we peed.
Wow. I don't know why you had to out us like that.
It's already
Okay,
on
so
there.
the story breakdown, I'm gonna I'll do my best. I meant to read this twice, and I only ended up reading it once. My tattoo went way too long last night, so I got home late and I did not have time to reread it or finish my rewatch of Alien 3. So please correct me if I stumble, you
Okay.
guys.
I'm ready.
So we open. So all right. So we open with like a mining ship collecting well, like it's mining ore, right?
Yeah.
It was the Romulus cold open. You know,
Well, that's what I texted David. I was like, this is just Romulus. Like that's funny. Like, did Romulus take this opening? So it's but it's I kind of like the way it is because you get, so they collect all the debris, they crack open a rock, they call Wayland Yutani, and they're like, hey, we have this thing. If you want it, it's yours. It's actually a really well done scene, I thought. As far as cold opens go, I thought it was really well done. Then we cut to space prison, right? And we have what I call our Con Air moment, where we're introduced to everybody that's coming off the transport ship and going to prison. Which I loved, guys. I'm not gonna lie about it. I loved that scene. I was like, this is great. This is totally like speaking to my like genre, like action genre sensibilities. We're getting to know our characters quick. And right up front.
And
David,
the prison is called Moloch Island. It's a space station in Earth orbit, which I think would be leading towards our on Earth that they can hear you scream kind of thing. I think kind of that was supposed to be some kind of bridge there. And then also because we saw Gateway Station just briefly in Aliens, it builds off that. And then the characters' names I have them written down are Styles, Grimes, Van Brunt, Domingo, and Kiryu. And then, of course, later we'll get the prison warden Packard and Mr. Lone.
No, Packard was the doctor. The prison warden was someone else who just wasn't really a main character. Packard
yeah, doctor, which is a character that kind of like actually makes it to Alien 3.
They got reassigned.
Yeah, they got reassigned. Yeah,
the prison warden. Yeah. So they get off. They do. They take them to their cells, and they basically. I think Alien 3 kept this loosely, where it's basically just a big, like one big spire, circular spire of like cell blocks. It's like a panopticon kind of, where everybody is just one level up, but it's a big circle. If I read it, that's how I read it and saw it as. And they go all the way, they drop them off up top, and then they're like, oh, there's no cells up here. It's a very 90s, like, even though the script was 89, it just feels very like early 90s, introduce you to like the grimiest prison you could imagine. I felt like, that scene in Hellbound where they're walking through the asylum and they're just looking in everybody's rooms, and it's
just the most disgusting possible. Every single
that's what it reminded me of.
Oh yeah, these characters are meant to be written to be like sweaty, gross, and awful immediately. Yes,
I love it. I'm here for it.
And so they realize that the 80s vibe of just casually like, oh yeah, this guy raped a bunch of people, like a couple jokes about it.
Well, and then putting him in a cell with a woman too, which was like horrifying.
Which I know it's a first draft, but like they're later like I don't want to get too ahead, but they are later like kind of in like with each other ish, and I didn't really like. There's no real bridge to that relationship, but it's a first draft, so I digress. They meet a guy who tells them for like however many of the little like prison coins they give you, I'll show you where you can get some cells that are open. And then he walks them all the way down to the very bottom of this fucking thing. And I wasn't sure if I quite understood this, but the reason that nobody wants to sleep in these cells is due to the way the gravity works. Did you guys?
Yeah. The
I
gravity.
was
You're better at this.
unclear. It seemed like they built the mystery of there's something wrong with these cells, but it didn't seem like it would be the gravity, because the gravity differential wouldn't be that strong, you would think. But
Right.
it seemed like then later you find out that everyone knew that people were getting killed in those cells. So
Yeah. What they were saying, they were telling them that the reason why nobody wants to live there is because the gravity is very heavy down there. But the reality is of course that there's a rogue alien like nesting underneath these cells. Yeah.
So we're introduced to some dead meats. Like there's a character named X-Ray who's who's like starving himself because he's doing it as a way to prevent himself from getting eaten by the alien, which is what he tells Styles later on. There's a couple other characters down there with them who I'm forgetting, but they feel like Clive Barker.
The guy with the
bionic
bionic exoskeleton guy.
Yeah,
they needed
X-Ray.
a way to pry the doors open. No, X-Ray was the guy that was really thin. Then there was another guy who had the exoskeleton. He was paralyzed.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Correct.
Which is very Alien Resurrection. Yeah.
Yeah. Later, so then we cut to like their jobs. I guess they essentially they just have them working on this station, just basically breaking rocks, I guess, and setting stuff up.
They were like mining ore or processing ore that had been mined by these miner ships that come in, and then they create these balls of steel and shoot them down to Earth for steel.
Sure. Which is really what I thought that scene of them just shooting it down to Earth was I liked that. That was an element of world building I liked.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah.
I can't. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Go on, please.
Which is funny because for Alien Romulus, I'm one of the people that loved all the stuff before the aliens showed up, like all the world building and all that stuff were all my favorite parts of Romulus. Like once the xenomorph came, I actually was less interested in what happened in that movie. So all this world building at the beginning is all,
my brain left the movie when they leave the mining plant. So
yeah.
But you guys know that already. While they're working, we get there's a character called Ivory that ends up running out of line because I guess his time's up for his sentencing. So he gets dragged away. We see him get executed by the state, I guess, whoever. But he's not actually dead. So I don't know if it's like a fault. So it's a false execution, right? Because he wakes up later in a room made to look like another room that losing the details. I feel like they made it to look like good.
So what I think they're doing is these characters that are supposed to be executed, they're making it look like they're executed, and then they're using them for alien experimentation, which is an interesting little twist in the story too.
Yeah. So Ivory gets a second chance at life that then quickly gets snuffed out because he gets killed by an alien that's lurking through the walls. From here, my memory is a little hazy, guys. So Styles ends up saving one of his crewmates, right, through this accident that almost kills Kiryu.
Yeah. Yep.
Right, and then he gets I'm floundering here, guys. He gets shot?
No. Well, someone falls into the machinery, he jams the machinery, so the whole system stops, but that
there we
breaks that stops the whole foundry. The guards get pissed at him and throw him or something. And then he ends up in the infirmary where he meets Packard, the doctor.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
I read it last night and this morning.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. I read it last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe Issa's the one that needs to be doing the story breakdown.
Yeah, so maybe I should tag you in from here.
Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, it was all so generic to me that I barely like. I can do it, but it all was just very generic to me. I don't know how else to explain it. But so the doctor is, this was like this like cheesy, like he's a charming criminal kind of situation, and she offers him a job in the clinic so he doesn't have to work in the mine. And they, kind of hit it off a little bit, I guess. And then honestly, like I'm having trouble remembering exactly.
Well, and then there was one scene that was really goofy where he talks about how attractive prisoners can be and how he was already married once in prison, which that scene I was like, oh, come on.
Oh, right. They're telling their backstory and he walks in.
That was over explaining why that they might have a romance.
Yeah,
that was like
right, because she later gets her husband off station, divorces her, and he's like, I've been divorced like 3 times or whatever.
Yeah.
He was married for 17 days once. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say their romance is like one of the most awkward parts of the script. It's like the thing that doesn't work the most. I really like all the introduction of the characters. It's great. I think the setup and the settings and the action set pieces are all great. The thing that and I really liked the kind of that. So one of the things that ends up happening too is that the warden is kind of exposed for like not doing a good job of keeping the secret of everything. And then this company sends a guy named Mr. Lone.
That was the greatest name.
Yeah, and that's Lone, Mr. Lone. And of course, it's not much of a twist that he's an android, especially from where the franchise has gone later. Right. But if you consider that each of the 2 movies before had Bishop and Ash, we're going to get an android. You're going to get it. So I thought that was a good character to do that. And I liked all the scenes between Packard and Lone were all, I thought, very good. There was a lot of pretty good dialogue on those scenes. There were 2 particular scenes that we'll get to in a little bit that were scenes that I particularly liked. I
like that reveal. I like it that his android reveal doesn't come to the end, because so many of the movies focus on this like othering of the android and making it like a point of contention for the characters, which I get in Alien and
Well, in the first 2, it worked out great. In the first one, the second one, there was every reason for Sigourney Weaver to be suspicious of an android. So that worked out really well, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I like that it's not revealed till later, and until that point, you just kind of think that he's just a company man. So I thought, and it works too to use a company man that is also an android, because I mean, if you've ever worked for a corporation, you've met those types of people. Totally. I don't know. I actually was like, oh, that's a cool reveal. And now I would probably be like, okay. But if it were, if considering Prometheus and everything, but I liked it. I liked that reveal.
Yeah, but so going back to 1989, it was just like a neat thing where it's like you find out he's an alien, but it's not really a twist that matters going forward. It was just like, oh, that was cool,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we jumped ahead. So back in the story, the new prisoners are all in the lower level, and an alien breaks in and kills one of these people, or 2 of these people, or whatever, some other people. And then they're like, okay, we got to escape. We got to get out of here. It's life or death. So they all turn to Styles, who is our escape expert, who's escaped from every prison, which we learned in his backstory that he's escaped from every prison known to man or whatever.
Which is hints of Riddick, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
Romulus.
So they hatch a plan to escape. Styles convinces the doctor to give him some like numbing spray that doubles as a blowtorch or whatever, because it's got alcohol in it or something. And then they use the bionic legs to pry open their prison door, saw through the floor, and escape. And meanwhile, the SS guard, which was the weirdest choice for a name in a script ever. They were called, I forget what it stood for, but it was like station security or whatever, So the SS set these traps for the alien that has escaped in the basement, and the prisoners go into the basement. They avoid the first trap. And then honestly, I don't even remember what happens after that. Like somehow the alien attacks the prisoners. They have to escape through like some random like galaxy quest inside the ship bullshit where they have to like, climb on a rope across like a bay of water or whatever. And I guess
One thing that's interesting about the rogue alien to me was that it can it like rearranges its body to get through things.
right.
So like I thought like it has like the plates on its body shift to accommodate whatever it's trying to get through, and I thought that was kind of a cool detail because at least
Yeah.
we're getting new, and we'll get to it later, but we get new variants of aliens that aren't goofy as shit like the alien dog in Alien 3.
Right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a list. I have a list of the various aliens that we get here. We get the chameleon alien, which is only seen. So also some of the things that we saw that were similar to Alien Resurrection, instead of like the various, one of the best scenes of Alien Resurrection is the scene with all the Ripley clones. Like when they go into the lab and there's all the fucked up Ripley clones is one of the freakiest scenes in Resurrection. It's one of the scenes that works, but it's kind of jacked from this script a little bit because there's all like the various like attempted manipulations of the alien in the laboratory, and then there's the baby alien, and so there's a chameleon alien, the brute alien, as it's called, the Siamese alien, which is only in the storage lab, the mutated alien.
It's like Pokemon or something,
Yeah. And then the new breed, which is the baby, basically, and then which a lot of people think Alien Resurrection had with that weird, very not cool looking alien that ended up in an Alien Resurrection. So there's a couple things going on there. Yeah.
So the plan is they're trying to escape into the water tanker that's coming to the station. And a bunch of them get killed by the alien, and then the guards accidentally shoot a hole in the wall, and the station decompresses. And then honestly, the third act was really the best part of the script. I thought that was like the decompression happens, and then the computer starts counting down 30 minutes until everybody dies, right? Until we're out of there.
And he wanted to keep that in real time.
And that was nice. Like I thought that was I was really bored with the script up until there, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is getting interesting. And then let's see, plot wise, what else happened? So everybody dies basically. Only the main characters are left alive. A couple prisoners, a couple guards, Lone and Packard, and Packard sets about playing like the Paul Reiser type thing where he wants to get this sample of the alien and all the data and escape with it in his private little drone ship. And everyone else is just trying to get off the ship somehow. Weird alien chase scenes occur where, like Packard somehow uses plot armor to just stay alive while the alien is in the room with her and stuff a couple times. It was really, really kind of weird.
You know what's one of the things that I think is really cool about this script that makes it a little different is the fact that the prisoners know that there's something going on, that there are these aliens like feeding off them and that they're being experimented on, but they have no rights and no ability to say anything. So they're fucked, and they know that they're there. And then they're like, yeah, go live down in those cells, right? Where the aliens are going to eat off you. These are parts of the script that I really like because it's something that's different from pretty much anything else in the franchise. And also were very different from the other two films that we had at this point. So these are things. Now, I will say I have two scenes that I want to look at closer, and one of them is the scene where they decide to escape. And one of the reasons why is because I think Twohy's dialogue in it is very good. Are you guys ready to look at the script a little bit?
Yeah, just to finish up the what happens. So they kill Lone. We find here Lone, he drops the what's his name? Styles threatens to drop the alien off the side. Lone is like, I'll give you a bunch of money, whatever you want, don't drop it. He drops it, Lone tries to catch it, falls to his death. We find out he's an android, and then the good guys jump through space to the drone ship, get in, and then the alien jumps after them through space and they ram it with the pointy end of the spaceship, and it breaks apart into pieces.
Yeah, the jump.
Which wouldn't that cast alien blood all over the front end of the spaceship though?
You would think, but I think
that's what I was thinking
it
the
was
whole
just very
time.
first drafty, like in all the other movies, they destroy the aliens in the exhaust, so this was like, let's hit them with the front of the ship this time, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's for a
I
reason.
loved the jump, by the way. I liked the jump. I thought that would have probably translated really well on screen. But
I mean, I feel like we've a lot of it. I mean, it's hard to think in terms of 1989 for a lot of this stuff, but a lot of these things are things we've seen before. You know what I mean?
We've seen before since then, but we might not have seen.
But
yeah,
I can't remember what I've like. It's very blurry for me because I've obviously there weren't a lot of movies that were doing these kinds of science fiction things, but there were a lot of books obviously that had like space jumps and like hey, we have no soup, but we have to jump from this ship to the other ship. We can survive this long in space before we freeze or whatever.
Yeah, Star Trek Discovery did that a couple years ago and did a really good version of that. That's what you're thinking of. I'm almost positive.
That's not what I'm thinking of. I'm trying to remember what I'm thinking of. There's some book where there's a whole group of people that has to escape from a ship, and there's no time to get them all into suits, so they all just take a deep breath in like pure oxygen, and they decide they can hold their breath for like 5 minutes, and they jump, like a whole crew of people jump from ship to ship, and I can't remember what book it is, but it's some old old science fiction.
Yeah, well, and again, you have to put
The Expanse did it really well too.
Yes, they did too. And then so a lot of what we're doing here is like we've seen stuff since then. That's one of the things that's annoying about talking about old science fiction when people are, totally. Like, oh, another script that Twohy did was the Imposter script, which I actually liked. Speaking of PKD, but because he wrote the original 30-minute version that actually worked, not the extended hour and a half version of Imposter. But regardless, I think the jump would have probably worked pretty cool at the time.
Yeah,
but
sure.
And yes, this is a first draft, and if it got made, it would get translated into film and
yeah, for a first draft, this was great. A lot of the stuff, you put in placeholders as a first draft, you're going to make them better. You're going to develop certain things more, like the two love stories, like if you can even call them, needed some development.
Yeah.
Although in the 80s, they probably wouldn't have gotten much more development. That's pretty much all you need in an 80s movie now.
All right, so that's the end of the story. I'm going to share screen with y'all, and we're going to look at the script a little bit. Okay. All right. This is the scene where, so Styles says, having second thoughts about this place, and to tell you the truth, they're the same as my first ones. I want to make a move. Domingo says, let's do it tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow. Go up top and find a little skag-ass bellhop and grab his cells. I want out, the big out. I loved him saying the big out. I loved that line. So there's this preparation montage, which is great. That's so 80s action movie. Like, you got to have your it's not a training montage, but but I loved the whole thing of that they had all these pieces and these little things and parts that they were using to do the breakout. And then
it's straight up like the Great Escape or something, like it's exciting.
Yeah. And then the fact that lockdown, he saw this as an escape movie. That's the way he described it in the interviews. He said, I wrote an escape movie and set with aliens. And then what about it? It goes down, man. And down is where what the fuck lives. I love that line. Down is where what the fuck lives. And so I liked this scene just because I thought it did a really good job of showing some of the really good dialogue in the script. I thought a lot of the scenes with the prisoners had really great dialogue, and it made them kind of funnier, more interesting characters. And here's what I like about it, and this is why I wanted to bring it up, which is that these scenes and the prisoners provide what the colonial marines provided to aliens, which is tertiary characters who can get eaten up by the aliens and quickly be introduced to us. So we, in this case, we're finding them funny. And but I like here, so they're talking about, I love this line where they're talking about how Styles got the 49 people killed. Well, this ain't every other place. And hey, what about you, Mr. Crash and Burn? You fucking turned 49 people into ash, and now you're gonna fly us out of here. This is some rad shit. This is a circle jerk for kamikazes. I love this part. It's ridiculous dialogue, but Styles, what's your sentence, Grime? 32 years or something? 26 with good behavior. Figure 32. Think you could last that long in the foundry or down here? See, Van Brunt, I need a pilot. And Domingo, I need because he's strong and he won't mind snapping necks on the other end if it comes to that. And Kiryu, I need because Domingo won't come without her. But you little turkey neck, the only reason you're plugged in is because I need to keep an eye out on the shit spewing mouth of yours. Good stuff. Now, granted, this is all on the actor. If you have the wrong actor, it's not going to work. You have the right actor doing this, a Bill Paxton type, they're going to kill it, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite, this is a different movie, but in Aliens, I think maybe one of the greatest lines of all time is when Hicks is giving like the inspirational speech, like, we're going to get out of here alive. We can do this. This little girl spent, whatever, 30 weeks in here by herself and she survived. And then Hudson goes, why don't we put her in charge, man?
Right.
The perfect delivery, the perfect line,
Right.
Oh, that movie's full of amazing lines though, right? Like that the dialogue is just one banger after another that for almost that whole movie.
For sure.
Yeah. And part of that was James Cameron allowing them to improvise. And a lot of great stuff came out of that. Let me see.
What is it Bill Paxton says? He's like, hey, Vasquez, has anybody ever mistaken you for a man? And she's like, no. Have they done it to you or something? And it's the best.
Have you ever been mistaken for a man? No. Have you?
Yeah. The best. I love it.
Yesterday at basketball, I got to use one of those lines where there was this 11-year-old kid challenged one of my friends to a one-on-one, and I wanted to start filming it because I thought it was hilarious that he was playing an 11-year-old, and somebody behind me yelled, he's like, it ain't okay to film children. And I said, I film you guys all the time. And I was like, straight out of Hudson, right? Okay, so this one I don't remember is close. So this is page 76. I noted I wanted to read. Okay, now Packard spots the video card she didn't put away. Checking the equipment, Mull turns his back. In 1 then second, Packard steps out, slips the card in the counter. The hidden stairs. The view looks up the stairs as the overhead plate opens. Packard descends cautiously. I believe this is where she's
discovered the secret lab where they
yeah. And the airlock, Packard reaches the other end.
Here we see Chekhov's thermal suits.
Right. The thermo gauge, right? And okay, here, the alien. Packard recoils the width of the room, smashing into more controls. The second light flares to reveal another alien. Packard lurches to the door. Gloved hands grope for the unlock lever. It's not there. Breathing comes in worthless snatches. She's suffocating under the avalanche of fear. All she can find is a key plate, a fucking key plate. Packard wheels back around and braces for the attack. Instead, the aliens don't move. Both are encased in glass. Packard forces calm on herself, finds a key attached to the suit, opens the door, some stabilizing breeze. Now she heads back. The room is a gallery of aliens, an army of aliens, all behind glass. Dreading it, Packard activates more case lights. Each alien is slightly different. One is silvery instead of black, a chameleon that blends in with its background. The brute alien. This is where they're all introduced. I thought this scene was great because and what he's doing in the script, a lot of people say not to direct on the page, but he's directing the scene. He's setting up in a way that Twohy would do really well as a director in Pitch Black and in Below, which is use the elements of the scene to do the reveal and build suspense. So what he's doing is, like, before you even realize they're in glass, he's finding a way to slowly reveal the aliens in the room and use the elements of the set piece to make it scary, right? And then, but it's all like a kind of a trick of the scene. And anyways, this is one of the scenes that I thought was really excellent writing, and I love the fucking key plate too, because basically it's a first draft. He's talking to the people making the movie. He's not writing it for the public. He's writing it for the people making the movie. And the SS guard, I know Anthony, you pointed out that there's a scene where it just says they gangbang, right? So.
It says, I love it, that I laughed for 20 minutes. It said SS guards gangbang heavy in all caps. I went, what? I that's never been a euphemism. Gangbang has never been a euphemism for a firefight the last time I checked. But that it's either the world's most hilarious typo or I'm missing something contextually, but man, was it funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you guys think about this scene? I don't know. Me personally, I thought this reveal was great. That's one of the reasons why
I have to say that of all the aspects of the Alien franchise, the xenomorphs and how they are different, and the concept of people trying to breed the xenomorphs to be a weapon, I hate that. I don't think it works at all. It doesn't make any sense. I've never liked it.
You'll hate my Alien3.
But like it just doesn't make sense. Like, or at least we've never been shown anything in the world that would make sense. Like, in Aliens, we have Paul Reiser trying to like bring one back, right? To capture one and bring it back. That's his prime directive. But why, right? Like, to breed an army of aliens to fight who? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, maybe you'd want to like, copy their acid blood to get a special kind of acid for some industrial process or something. But as like a weapon of war or just a weapon, it makes no sense. I've never understood that aspect of the franchise.
I think I could change your mind on that, but that's my modern alien idea that I can't give away.
Okay. Tell me offline. I'll swear to secrecy.
So we have 3 parts left of this episode. We're going to do the review of the script and talk about how it might have translated to film. We're going to compare it to the final film that got made, and then we're going to give our pitch going back in time. So full on script review, starting with Anthony. I always pick Anthony when he's muted. So.
Well, this is like in class when the teacher is looking around, who wants to answer? And you're like, oh, I'm just looking around. Yeah, and then like you. I liked it. I liked the script. It really does speak to kind of like my genre sensibilities and what I like to see in a movie. And I think that so what really makes Alien and Aliens work is that it keeps like the kind of the lore and the general vibe that Alien set. But like we've talked about, Alien is a horror movie. Aliens is an action movie. And it works because the genre is switched up a bit. So we're getting new stuff with some familiar things. And I like that this script is more of an escape movie. And I love the fact that the only mention of Ripley is that she's deceased. Right? Yeah. So it comes up on the computer. what I've noticed in watching Alien 3, what I don't really like about it, and kind of what I don't really like about a lot of the later Alien films, is that the kills are really boring and generic and kind of the same. Killed with a tail, have your head blown through by the secondary mouth and the xenomorph. And that's kind of like, we don't get enough alien action in the script, in my opinion. You know, a lot of more the more gruesome action elements are the people, like when, I forget if it's Grimes or Van Brunt, who trips the tripwire and gets encased in mud, I guess, which instantly kills you.
Yeah, it was like the
Um
sealant or whatever, like I don't know what it was, like the hull breach
um
sealant.
the last SS guard alongside Dags gets ripped through the door at the last minute, and we just see his arm. Right, it's his arm or his leg?
Yeah,
It's
his
no,
arm
it's his
holding
arm
the
because he has the
flamethrower gets
flamethrower.
cut off by the closing.
Yeah. So like I think it really gives us a really cool setting to play with, but it doesn't use it enough, in my opinion. Uh and I think that's all stuff that you could kind of pump up in a first draft, or sorry, in a second and third draft. But in rewatching the majority of Alien 3, I kind of like this script better. And I like that it doesn't
You're jumping
have.
ahead.
Oh,
You're
sorry,
jumping ahead.
you told me to review
I
the
said that would
script.
be the second part. Review the script. Well, okay, we'll do it
What?
all at once. Go ahead.
Unclear instruction.
It's so confused now. Um, David, you threw me off. Now I forgot what I was saying.
You watched part of Alien 3 compared to
Yeah,
watching it.
I do like this. There we go. I think the strength of this is not being so tied to, we got to have Ripley, we got to have it, and that's a bigger part of the movie. We got to do some callbacks, which we if we're going to talk about Romulus, I'll save it for that. But I generally I had a really positive, fun experience reading the script.
Yeah. Issa.
So it was fine. Like, give it the credit. It's a first draft. If it was made into a movie, let's assume it would have been fleshed out and been a little better. But honestly, like, time traveling back, if I had seen this movie in 1989, I probably would have liked it a little more than Alien 3, solely again because they didn't kill the main characters off screen. But it still would have been very disappointing and not live up to the previous movies or the potential of what it could have been. So I almost feel like this movie, the actual Alien 3, and honestly, and Romulus too, are all pretty interchangeable. Like, they're all the same movie essentially. Like, there's not a lot of difference between the three of them. I'd put them all very close together in terms of how good they are and how interesting they are.
Yeah, this has a lot in common with Romulus, actually, as far as like the whole like heist in Romulus is very close to the escape,
Yeah.
part of okay, so for me, judging this script, I'm gonna judge it also against the Gibson scripts that I've read. And this script smokes Gibson's script. Now, Gibson is more famous because he became a best-selling author, and I guess he was at that time too. And his script got turned into a graphic novel because people were very curious about what William Gibson did with Alien. But this script smokes that script. Like, seriously, it's way better. That would have been a boring as fuck movie. It would have been really not good. And you think you didn't like Alien 3 as it was? I'm sorry, William Gibson's Alien 3, it has a lot to say about capitalism. Great. But, I can read Ursula Le Guin if I want sci-fi takes on capitalism. But so I think the script is way better than that. I don't know what Eric Red's script looked like, but he said it sucked, so I'm going to assume it sucked. But I think, and compared to Alien 3 that got made, I think this is a way better Alien 3. This is, yes, it has Fincher direction, and so it has like some cool elements and it has some cool things. I think Alien 3, the problem with Alien 3 is it's so goddamn morose that when I rewatched it like a year ago, I was just like, oh my God, this is just, ugh. It's like, Aliens had the exciting moments, it had the funny lines. You were laughing in the theater. You were also like cheering when stuff happened. And as stupid as get away from her, you bitches, all that. Like, you were still like into it. There were moments that were crowd pleasing. And then the Alien 3 that they made is like this sad prison movie that ends with Ripley, like holding the chest burster and she goes to her death. It's like, it's sad as fuck. And that's one of the reasons why Alien 3 failed, because people were going in ready for a thrill ride, because a couple years earlier, they had this great thrill ride, and then they went into the movie and it was morose, sad, and awful. So I think an escape movie.
But that doesn't make it that bad. Like,
No.
It sucks for other reasons. Like, you can have a sad, bleak movie, which, in my opinion, as David knows, I would love.
I'm not against a sad, bleak movie. I'm just saying in that moment where Alien 3
contextually with audiences and what audiences want, I understand that contextually, but I think that if we don't move the vibes forward, we're just gonna get the same old crap, and maybe that's what people want. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's not what I want.
Right.
I guess is what I'm saying.
And look, I'm a person that like I for example, like Star Trek Picard, I liked the first season because he was doddering and old, and a lot of people were like, I don't want to see Captain Picard looking frail and old, and I was like, I do. I want to see that. I want to see what happens to him when he becomes frail and old. I want to see Last Jedi when they realize the Jedi's fucked up, right? And so I can handle that. But what I'm saying is, at the time, audiences didn't dig it for that reason. I'm also okay with the fact that I'm also okay with audiences not getting something at first and then getting it later. The Thing is a classic example. The Thing came out a couple weeks after ET, and people didn't want to see The Thing at the time. They were wrong, right? And so people can be wrong about Alien 3 and still, like, we can look back as a studio, like when we're talking about what they made, and say, like, what could we have done in between that would have pleased audiences and made a good movie. And in my opinion, the Escape movie would have been a little better, because it would have been something different. It would have been with criminals and a prison escape movie, and then with aliens, and it still had a little bit of the anti-corporate thing. So I personally, I think they would have been better off if they had made this movie than the movie that they made. But that's just me. So and so maybe we can start talking about our pitches for what we would have done. Is there anything else on a general review that you guys want to say?
No, I think that's good. I think like how it would have been received. I don't think that this movie would have been very well received either, just because I don't think, well, this segues right into your next question. So here's my take on what the constraints are on making this movie. So you're an exec, you're deciding what should Alien 3 be, right? So you've got a few choices. You've got follow the characters directly after, just pick up where Aliens left off. But then what do you do to make it more exciting, right?
Here's the real world problem.
Okay.
It's been a couple years, and although Newt would have been frozen in time inside the ship, you'd have to cast a new actor the same age, and that was one of the things they ran into. The problem with
that
Newt
was run into as an actual problem.
Yes,
that seems like that would be the least of the problems. You can always replace with another. Who cares?
Yeah, but people were very attached to Newt the way that she was, and so I think part of the problem is, and I think they tried developing with Michael Biehn and not Ripley and not Newt, and then they tried doing all that. Anyways, go ahead.
So for various reasons, then, okay, I didn't know about that one. That seems weird to me. That seems like an easy recast. Or just we drop the kid off at the orphanage. She's doing fine with her, or she's with her aunt, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whatever. You can get rid of a kid easily in a movie like that. But the problem is, where do you go? There's no plot that jumps out of what they would do next, right? Like, it's not like they're scientists who would be like, we're gonna go find the engineers and go off on this mission to do something. So there's no movie that jumps out at me there. You know what I mean? Like, they could get back to Earth and Earth has been overrun by xenomorphs. You know, that would be kind of interesting, maybe.
Well, I
But
think what you do to get Ripley into the Styles character situation is some corporate fuckery of blaming Ripley for what happened on LV 426.
right, sure, and you could do that, but then you end up in that same with making the same movie. You don't want to make the same Monster in the House movie. Like, it's just boring. There's a ceiling to how good that could be. So to me, you have to go bigger, and bigger is either a xenomorph invasion of Earth, or what I would do is involve the engineers and somehow go learn more about the engineers, or have the engineers come to Earth.
Already?
Yeah, one of the things I think would work would be, you like, so okay, thinking of like alien invasion movies, I sort of feel like Independence Day is sort of like the natural sequel to Aliens, which sounds ridiculous, but it's the best.
You're losing
It's
me
the
here,
best
bud.
example of what you could have done with an alien invasion. And I know that sounds crazy. Or something like, there aren't many movies that really even fit the genre, but like Battle for Los Angeles, the alien invasion army movie, that would be like the military version of the Colonial Marines fighting xenomorphs or whatever. But honestly, fighting xenomorphs is stupid outside of a small enclosed space. So to me, you need to bring in the engineers. They've come to Earth to sterilize the threat of xenomorphs or whatever, something just different like that. And I think if you don't go in that direction, then you need to do something where you don't include any of the same characters and you just do something different, which is what they seem to have tried to do in this situation and with this.
Well, my idea doesn't involve any of the main characters, but or doesn't. I mean, my idea, you could bring back Michael. You could bring back Hicks, but you wouldn't be able to bring back the other two. But the uh, the thing for me, if I was, going back in time and looking at the parameters, okay, so the problem is that, your Newt's getting older, so you kind of don't want to get into that. It seems like Sigourney Weaver is not interested, so you have to go in a direction without Sigourney Weaver, right? And what you could have done to get Sigourney into the Styles role too, you could have also, the whole like crash ship thing, like after, if she survived LV 426, you do a time jump, a little bit of time, she's gone back to Earth, she was working as a pilot and the PTSD caused her to crash and kill a bunch of people, and she's in that situation. I bet that's what he did. But for me, if I was going back in time and it's 1989, I've and the studio execs are saying, David, what are you going to do? It's been 3 years and we need to make a sequel to Aliens. I would build it on the Colonial Marines. And I would make it an investigation movie where the Colonial Marines are skeptical of the corporation that they were hired by, and they're trying to do their own separate investigation of, inspired by what happened on LV 426, and like a team, and they mentioned the whole thing about bug hunts in Alien 2, and so in order to do an action scene that can buy you some time to do an investigation story, show one of these like other bug hunts, these other things, show the Colonial Marines clearing some kind of infestation on some other colony, not xenomorph, something else. And then you have like a Colonial Marine, and that's where you could bring Hicks in, right? But some kind of investigator that works for the Colonial Marines that's like, I want to find out what this corporation is doing, and then you end up on a station that has like the experimental aliens and those kinds of things, and then you have a team of colonial marines, and then you go back to that well.
But see, you're never gonna have a better movie like that than Aliens. You got to go bigger.
That might be true. I'm just saying, like, what I'm thinking to do. But I'm also not trying to make Independence Day here, Issa. So,
no, I wasn't saying that making Independence Day would be a good idea. I was saying that's the only natural conclusion to the aliens actually being on Earth is something.
Well, and Twohy did something in the script that you could build off of, which is that whole, like, where they're dumping the steel, like, onto Earth. And you could do, like, a whole kind of thing where, like, this space station in orbit has, drops the aliens. Like, you build up a story, and then your third act is the aliens getting dumped onto Earth, and that's
right.
It would only have to be in one city. Like,
but it's like no one in the alien movies are like, or no, they never. I mean, Prometheus sort of attempted to, but it's like you've discovered an alien species, right? Like, and then you've discovered another alien species, and you found this ship. You're like, where did the ship come from? Let's go find out. Like, that seems like a natural thing that you would have wanted to explore in Aliens 3 somehow.
Well, which unfortunately, that was the sequel we were promised to Prometheus,
right.
And then ended up being a montage in Covenant. And again, I'm different from the majority of the audience in that that's the movie I wanted to see, not Covenant. I wanted to see that movie. But again, that's really getting deep into what's going on. I'm not sure that my idea is better than what Twohy had. I don't think it is. I actually think Twohy's escape movie would have been a good movie, and that's.
No, I think the problem you're running into is like it's like an Olympic dive where there's like an execution level and then there's like a difficulty level,
Yeah.
And the difficulty level of making another Monster in the House alien movie is just very low, even if you do it perfectly. Like, the best case scenario is you're just making another movie that's kind of the same. Like, Predator had the same problem. They got around it by moving the time, and doing like the native warrior fighting the Predator. That was cool, But I mean, and as David, I think you were one of the people that suggested you could go do that, and you could do Samurai Predator. You could do, whatever, Wild West Predator, whatever,
A lot of people have said that. It's not just me.
Yeah, sure. But it's like, that's same thing. It's like the difficulty is pretty low, but you can still make an interesting movie by changing the thing. But essentially, it's the same movie over and over. And I feel like Aliens, the franchise, has fallen into that trap where literally this script, Alien 3, and Prometheus are essentially all the same, different versions of the same movie.
Well, and yeah, and that's why I kind of like the idea of doing like the investigation, because like you get to do like the kind of procedural thing, and then you could come up with interesting, weird things about like the people from the corporation and what their motivations were for doing those things. And I would maintain the whole like near Earth thing for it, and then that gives you a chance to have a final act with the colonial marines. And that might make an interesting third act, which is if you set up the same kind of thing where there's like the space station that's doing the research has like a dump feature, and that once they like discover it, they, and then the marines have to are on the dump ship when it goes into orbit. That could be a really good action scene. But
no, and I like your idea. I think I would just want to see a movie that didn't end up as another Monster in the House movie.
Sure. And your way around that is to have it be like a military tribunal type investigation centered around the colonial marines, and then it gives you a chance to introduce new colonial marines. But also what it would have done in 1989 is give you a chance to have Michael Biehn back as Hicks.
I have to add, Michael Biehn was like my favorite actor in that era. Like, just like Terminator was my absolute favorite movie. Aliens was my second absolute favorite movie. And then they killed him off screen. So,
Yeah. And we needed to see him before Art of War, right? So, and we could have had Hicks back, and then and plus, like, what's the synergy there is if you bring Hicks back in that role, is he becomes Ripley from
Right.
from Aliens, of like, I survived this shit, you have no idea what you're fucking getting into. And so like the investigator could be pulling this shit like, hey Hicks, I need you for this investigation, like, don't, and he would basically be like, don't dig into this shit, let it go, you don't want to go there. Anthony, travel back in time, it's 1989, you go to the Fox lot.
I gotta dip here pretty soon, so
oh, we're all gonna dip here pretty soon, so
but just for awareness, I have two ideas, both of which I'm just gonna keep to myself just in case. Now, I'm a little gun shy now after what happened recently, so
sure. Well, I was thinking of something
I'll tell you guys
producible
offline if you're actually interested.
But what type of movie would you make? How about that? Like high level.
I was thinking of something that you couldn't make now that would have to be like just in that pocket of Alien 3.
I am looking at an alien / eco-terrorism movie.
Oh yeah, I like it.
Is what I'm more thinking that. And I don't want to say more than that. And then David knows my other very but
yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you guys when we're done recording.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, and on that note, no, we're about ready to wrap up. So
Wait, David, one more thing real quick, just so people don't think I'm an idiot. The reason I brought up Independence Day was because before we had this, I was trying to go through a mental list of like all the alien invasion movies and which one would even be close to being like the next step up from like, Alien is the first one. There's just one alien. Aliens, there's lots. What would Aliens be, right? So full scale invasion. The xenomorphs aren't the right aliens for a full scale invasion movie, but that Independence Day was the movie I came up with that was closest to like an actual alien invasion.
Well, an Alien Resurrection was kind of trying to set that up. It's just the movie didn't do well.
Yeah.
And that was going to be the next step after Alien Resurrection, I think, originally, was to like, they're on Earth. And you know what? That teaser of them going to Earth may have been in after Alien Resurrection, and we may have just
I totally could be misremembering that, but that was what I remembered for Alien 3.
All righty. So next up on this here podcast is going to be I think I'm going to do that one first. So okay. Well, we have the Science Fiction Hall of Fame episode on Clifford Samack's The Huddling Place coming up with Greg from Artifact Books and Joaquin Boaz, and we get a lot into that story translated into the novel City by Clifford Samack, which is one of the best science fiction novels of the 50s. Technically, most of it was written in the 40s, but it was fixed up together in the 50s. It's great and underrated. And so that episode, I've already recorded it. It's great. And I don't know what we're going to do next on this series, but I'm leaning towards Big Trouble in Little China 2, guys. And I don't know if the script's any good or not, but
let's find out.
Let's find out.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, and so one of the things I've got coming up is that I will be in LA for the Speculative Media Through Fiction Conference, the Queens of the Future. Aliens producer Gail Ann Hurd was supposed to be the keynote speaker, but she cannot make it, so I'm bummed on that. But that's going to be a great conference coming up. It's the theme is women in science fiction. And I'm doing a talk on DC Fontana, the author or the original story editor of Star Trek, which had its 58th anniversary the day we are recording this podcast. So shout out to Star Trek on its 58th birthday. And on that note, we're going to go. Any last comments? Anthony, where can folks find you if they want to if they want to hire you to do an Alien novelization?
You can mostly, I mean, you can email me at anthonytrevino976@gmail.com if that's legitimately what you're interested in doing. But I'm mostly on Instagram at Lurk the Void, and I am occasionally on Facebook. I just I just find that place to be mostly a cesspool. But and then you can also pick up my latest novella co-written with Ryan C. Thomas called Love is a Monstrous Death. It is in book 16 of the Dark Tide series from Crystal Lake Publishing called Psychoactive. So if you are interested in a trauma adaptation of J.G. Ballard's High Rise, come check it out.
Yeah, and for me, Anthony and I would love to write an Alien novel either alone or together or both. And one thing that would help with that is to buy our novel, Nightmare City, that's available on Amazon. But one thing that would also really help is I've got a novel, The Last Night to Kill Nazis, which is a horror action novel, and it's at sale at Barnes and Nobles around the country. And if those start flying off the shelf, I have a lot more possibility to get an Alien novel written, guys. So, you know, and there's 2 Alien authors that have blurbed it. 2 Alien tie-in authors, John Shirley and Tim Levin. So if you're a fan of the Alien novels, you might be a fan of The Last Night to Kill Nazis. Hell, Issa even read it, and he doesn't read books anymore.
I mean, I read it, I loved it, and I have read books still. Sometimes I do sometimes read books.
Issa, how can folks?
A good time to remind you, David, that I still don't have a copy of People's Park that I pre-ordered like a year ago.
Oh yeah, because you sacrificed. Well,
yeah,
the reason why
there were too many fans at the signing, and I didn't, so I forego getting my copy.
And I owe you one, and now you have an address, so I will mail it to you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and yes, you sacrificed your copy for one extra person to get it at the book release party. That was very
That's
nice
the kind
of
of
you.
guy. That's the kind of guy I am.
Yeah, and so Issa, do you want folks to find you?
You can find me on Facebook if you really try hard. But you know, whatever. I don't have anything to plug at this point, so you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, folks, we'll see you next time. I'm always terrible at ending these. So Issa will be back for the Science Fiction Hall of Fame too, because we're doing an episode that was turned into an episode of Star Trek. So the Star Trek bridge crew will be back to cover Arena by Frederick Brown. Gorn action will ensue.
Nice.
We'll see you again soon. Thanks for coming, and bye.